Hello guys, David here, Central Cal Piper. I thought I'd do a remake of a VR that I kind of did last week. I entitled it a fake VR to Ragamuffin Piper because although I started with the intention of doing a VR, it just became me telling stories, kind of went down a rabbit trail of sorts. Attempting to light some McBaron's Scottish blend in my La Roca Bulldog. Anyway, so I thought I'd do a VR. Randy was asking about Thanksgiving or Christmas memories, and I thought I would do one on Thanksgiving because, like most of you, I have a lot of good memories about Thanksgiving, and thought I'd talk about this for a few minutes. So here we go. Taking a break from work here. All right. Well, as I've mentioned before, I think I've mentioned before, I've recorded videos and never published them, so I don't remember really how much I've actually included in my videos, but I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house when I was a kid. I actually lived there with my mom when I was first born for a couple of years before moving out with my mom. But I spent a lot of time there. My grandma, my mom's mom and dad lived nearby, same town, pretty close to the same neighborhood. And my mom always worked, so I spent a lot of time at my grandma's house. She had a daycare back then, and so she always had a lot of kids over there, and I was one of those kids. So I spent a lot of time. Well, around the holidays, it was really a lot of fun. My family has always been big on traditions, like most families, and Thanksgiving was a special time of the year. First of all, at my grandma and grandpa's house, my grandpa built the house in the 40s, and he'd done some improving and adding throughout the years, but it was still basically a rectangular structure with a living room, 3 bedrooms, a dining room, and 1 bathroom and a kitchen. But throughout the years, my grandma used her nursery money, daycare money that she got to improve it. So she did a lot of the decorating herself, obviously. She would buy things. She really liked Currier and Ives and old-fashioned things like that. So her house was full of a lot of old-fashioned decorations, very cozy. She had a fireplace put in at some point in the 70s, even though in California, you don't always need one, but some mornings it's, can be in the 30s. So it's nice to have a fireplace. So she had that put in. But on Thanksgiving, I remember that the day before, let's start with the night before Thanksgiving. I was always at my grandma's house because I was part of this daycare. So I got a sneak preview into all the holiday activities, all the things that were in the works for the upcoming holidays. So my grandma was a big baker. She baked homemade pies. They were really good. And so she'd spend the night before Thanksgiving making apple pies, chocolate cream pies, and I don't remember exactly which ones were for Thanksgiving and Christmas. She had one she'd bake at each time, but I always remember her baking lots of pies, and she had a pantry, and she'd put those pies in that pantry, and she like a dish towel on top of each one, so nothing would get at the pies, but she always cooked all these pies the night before Thanksgiving. So I remember being over there in the afternoons as I got older. I had a paper route, as I mentioned before, based out of my grandma's neighborhood. So I got to enjoy all those smells of her baking pies the night before Thanksgiving. Well, I remember going back there on Thanksgiving, and I remember going there earlier in the day because she'd always be making the things for the dressing, how you basically saute the onion and celery and all that, and butter. So remember having her do that. My grandpa, he'd always start a nice big fire on Thanksgiving morning. A couple years later, I remember it was foggy and pretty cold, so he'd go out to the garage, get some firewood, and bring it in, start a big old raging fire for the living room. My grandma would be cooking, getting things ready. She'd put the turkey on early in the morning. I remember she'd slather the whole thing with butter, or probably margarine. She called it oleo, because back when she was a girl, or when she was younger, during the Depression, you know, they didn't have, it was like a butter substitute that they had to add yellow food coloring or yellow coloring to. But anyway, she put this all over the turkey, season it, and get it in her oven. Start all the other things that went with Thanksgiving. So I remember being there in anticipation of my other cousins showing up. I was the oldest cousin, and the next in line was my cousin Sherry. She was a couple years younger than me, but I always look forward to her and my other cousins showing up. So the house was just a small house full of all kinds of good smells. Windows would always be steamed up because of the cooking, and the fireplace on the inside. But I remember that all my other relatives would show up, aunts and uncles. Well, I had one aunt, Aunt Debbie. She passed away a few years ago. She'd show up with her husband Dean, my cousins Eric and Becky. My Uncle Dean was a great guy. One of the few father figures I had around in my early childhood. My grandma, she spent, like I mentioned, her money on extra things. My grandpa worked for the railroad. He was a machinist for Santa Fe Railroad, and did that until the mid-70s, and he retired. After working there for, I think, 35 years or so. Legend has it, he never missed one day of work due to being ill. And I believe it, because he was from the Depression, and once you got that job, man, you didn't let it go for anything, or even when you were sick. So anyway, but he worked for the railroad. That paid, I guess, the basic bills. My grandma, though, realized if she wanted anything else extra, she would need to work. So she did the daycare, and she'd buy all these things. Well, one thing that she bought these fancy plates, dishes. And I remember when I was a kid, when she bought those, because she would go to town on Saturdays. She didn't drive. My grandpa would take her downtown, usually drop her off, and she would get all of her errands done back when our downtown was a nice place to go. Had all the little shops and stores that you would need to get most everything. And so she'd go down, but she had these, she put these dishes on layaway, I remember. They were really expensive special dishes. They were like china dishes, but they had a pattern called the Friendly Village, like an old-fashioned scene, like a winter scene. And the dishes were basically white or beige with, colorful prints on them. So she'd get those out for special days like Thanksgiving, and she had some fancy silverware that she'd only use on Thanksgiving and Christmas. She set the table hours, in advance, have it all nice and stuff with cloth napkins. But I used to love just being there when she was getting those things ready and cooking. I really liked to see my grandma cook, and I enjoyed watching that. It gave me a real joy of cooking that I still have. So all the relatives would show up, and uncles, other aunts too, by marriage. And we'd eat that massive meal, mashed potatoes, turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, both types. My grandma always made us kind of a salad that my mom helped her. Had apples and like grapes that you had to peel, and walnuts, and kind of a mayonnaise, marshmallow dressing of some sort. It was bananas. It was primarily sweet. That was always a thing and celery too. That was always a thing on Thanksgiving. It went with everything. I remember that was always around for years and years. But we'd all eat, and everyone would go into a food coma for a while. And maybe in the evenings, my grandma always had a piano. My mom played the piano, and my Aunt Debbie played the piano. So usually My mom would play the piano after the lunch at dinner time, and my uncles and aunts would sing old hymns. And so my mom would play all these hymns, and my uncles would sing. That was a great memory, and I would try to sing too when I was older. Well, and when I was younger too, probably. But fun times. It happened forever. It seemed like years and years we did that same thing, and then of course it just stopped. They got old. My grandpa passed away. My grandma did a couple of Thanksgivings after that, but like all good things, that came to an end. Now I try to carry on the tradition. I make the turkey. I've done some pies before, not like my grandma, but I've tried to follow her recipes. We have a couple of them. When my wife and I were first married, we went to her house the night before Thanksgiving just to watch her bake her pies. So we took some notes, but she didn't measure anything. She just kind of added things, you know. She'd bake bread like that too. I remember putting a big mound of flour on the counter and just making it without measuring anything, just grabbing things and pouring some liquids in and all that. But she had a lot of experience, so she knew what she was doing. Anyway, so we try to carry on the tradition as best we can. And but you know, those times are legendary. As you get older, you reflect back on those times and you realize that you'll always have those memories. You can't duplicate them, but you can try, and we continue to do that. So anyway, guys, those are my Thanksgiving memories. Hope you've enjoyed it. I'll talk to y'all soon. God bless.